And good evening, ICCA members. My name is Dennis Spate, and I would like to welcome all of you here. It's great to see so many of you have joined the Global Meetings Management conversation here today. Please use the chat function in Zoom to tell others that you have joined, so we all get an idea who is in this meeting. You can post your questions in the Q&A section and vote for the best questions you wish the panel to address. During this meeting, we will also be using Slido, so please open this program if you want to participate in the polls. We have a truly global panel of experts, and I would like to thank them in advance for preparing this session. We have agreed that they will do the introductions themselves, just to save some time. But I would also like to welcome our ICCA members, our ICCA board members, and in particular, Craig Talley and Eyal Halevi, who have invested their valuable time to pull this 1-hour program together. I hope you will all enjoy the premiere of this virtual event, and I hope to soon be able to meet you face to face. Craig, over to you.
Great. Well, hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. We were remarking before we started, we had 170 people sign up for the session today, which is way more than we normally get at a sector meeting, at even our annual meeting. So it's great to know so many of you are with us, and looking at who's appeared on the chat screen, I can tell we do truly have the world represented, Eyal. So it's good to see.
Correct. Everybody well. 170 registration before, it's really a high number. I hope it's not only the corona who basically people have got not so much to do at home and they register. But it's great to have you. I know that there are a lot of questions, lots of hesitation. It's a lot of uncertainty around the world today. We are an optimistic industry, so we try to aim for the best and we try to think positive. But we all know that there are many questions, lots of worries, but also lots of hope. So we welcome everybody, and we have prepared whatever we felt is necessary, thanks to our panelists and thanks to ICCA team, and we hope to assist.
Great. So what we wanted to do today was a couple of things. Number one, for those of you who haven't gone on to Slido, please do take some time over the next few minutes to go on to Slido and answer some of the questions we have posed there, ideally all of them, because we are going to show those results just a little bit later in the program, and that'll form the basis for some of our dialogue. But first, we really wanted to use our members as a way from around the world to kind of give us a snapshot of what's happening in our industry, what's happening to our companies in the PCO space, the meetings management space, all over the world, and just get a sense of how are we being impacted and what do we think is coming. So I'm going to introduce our panelists and call on them to introduce themselves and just give us a quick snapshot of what they're seeing and what they're dealing with in their region of the world. So let me first call on someone from Asia Pacific. It's been quite interesting throughout this process to watch how well those countries responded to this event and how much they were able to keep the numbers low. We're not sure what's happening with the second round, but really impressive to watch how some of our colleague countries in the world handled the arrival of COVID-19. Nancy, take us away.
Hi, everybody. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon. This is Nancy. I'm from A State Direct International Private Limited, Singapore. Been in the industry for around 30 years. That's quite long, right? Thank you for inviting me, and it's great to meet everybody in this virtual meeting. We are badly affected by COVID-19. I think you can see from the speedometer that we are one of the highest. Let's forget about China, they have gone through it, and we're one of the highest, scary. But if you look at the middle again, and you find that Taiwan is interesting, they are the most successful country. They are able to contain the COVID-19, and they have 425 cases and the lowest number of deaths. How does it affect our business in this part of the world? COVID-19, face it, we are the first to be affected. If you look at it, we are the first to cancel our meetings and to also like postpone the meeting. Practically to date, we are around to zero. I think it's zero. Most events are either canceled or postponed. Many actually postponed to next year or even the following year. I think this is the same for the rest of the region because I was with my friends in the industry, the World PCO Alliance, and I find that we are all on the same boat. And I'm sure it's same for globally. Face-to-face meeting postponed, clients getting very worried. They're worried that they got no registration number or very low, or exhibition sales will be reduced. In Singapore, we have circuit breaker. Today, the government just announced there is another round of circuit breakers, and we are going to extend to June. And you can tell that we are in really great big trouble. And because of this, we have now we are going into do our own virtual meeting most of the time. But I must also say that my friend in Taiwan is fantastic. We are business as usual. It's the only country I know in Asia at this moment that business is as usual. China has recently been opened. That's quite good. But in Singapore, we actually do virtual meeting for self as well as for business. Actually, everybody is doing virtual meeting. And what kind of events are we doing? That is coming back in event after the COVID-19. Basically, social events will come first, wedding, as well as government meetings, national meetings, regional and international business event. I think we are the last. Don't you all agree with me? We are the last. Virtual meeting is a norm today, not because we want it, because we're all stuck in our home. Got nothing to do. We just need to talk to people. Let's go into virtual meeting because we need to talk to people. But when COVID-19 is over, hopefully it will be over soon. I think it's another 1 year or 18 months. Well, I think face-to-face meeting will come back, but it will not be as big as today. It will be smaller in size, and I think the hybrid component will come in. Virtual meeting will be there, but it will not be able to take away our rights for face-to-face meeting. That's what I feel. In terms of government assistance over here in this part of the world, Singapore, we are fortunate, our government quite good. They have the job support scheme between 25% to 75% of the first 4,000 gross monthly wages per local employee. They give us things like bridging loan to work with the banks with low interest rate, waiver of foreign worker levy, foreign worker rebate. They give you training subsidy, and individual citizen, you actually, when you're age of 21 and above, you get $600 Sing. In Thailand, Sumet from Thailand told me, staff is eligible for small amount of financial support if they are out of job for 4 months. Business can also apply for low interest loan at participating banks, but terms conditions apply. Taiwan, they told me that bridging loan, government is helping all the community to approach the bank to get very good loan. And if you have problem with interest, the government will step in. Job subsidy up to US 700 per staff. India, sorry, my friend in India told me no go. And in Indonesia, they say, yeah, we have stimulus. But Razak from Indonesia told me nothing was announced yet. So they don't have anything today. So guys, that's all I have to say. And I think I crossed the boundary of timing. I hope not.
That's all right, Nancy. Why don't we move west? And Yao, can you give us a snapshot of what's happening in your world in the Middle East?
Yes, well, a lot of things are very similar to what is happening. First of all, good afternoon again. And as we said before, thank you, Nancy, for the detailed information. In the Middle East, similar things are happening. It's varied from country to country. I am based in Israel currently, over a month without flights, very difficult. And therefore, the local government, as far as it's concerned, helps a lot to small and medium business. Currently is only verbally, and I think we all have to understand it. It's only a month since everything, since the breakout, and everything is just new. and I call it on-the-job training or on-the-job action. People need to learn what is the repercussions. Our industry are the first to suffer and the last to get out of it at the end of the day. We are aware of it. Conferences are not something that are a must. They are not a need. They are not. They are luxury in a way, even though they are professional conferences. The level of, let's say, the amount of death in Israel itself are not so high, and it all seems like it's under control. But I think that this time the corona is not something local. It's something very, very global. That it's not only up to a destination, but since we became a very small world, it's all about the flights and the connections. And if we compare to what was here 100 years ago, it's not the same. And this is basically what is affecting everybody. From conferences point of view, everything is canceled. Some have been postponed. Professional conferences have been postponed, most of them to 2021, all the international one. Local one towards the end of the last quarter of 2020. Again, under question mark whether it's going to happen or not. And people are optimistic. We are doing a lot of medical conferences, so doctors are optimistic. However, everybody is aware of the fact that only if there will be, if the restrictions will be lifted off, if there will be possibility to hold the conference, then we will do them. So it's not about us as PCO or the clients, it's about the restrictions, it's about the policy that will come out from the governments or the different governments. We cannot give a forecast yet, but we hope that the local conferences will start at the last quarter or the last quarter of 2020. International one, as I said, only 2021 globally. And then, as I said, we are optimistic, but those are the facts. And later, I'm sure there'll be some more questions.
Great, thanks, Eyal. Let's take a left-hand turn and go south. And Nina from South Africa, what's kind of the current condition of our world on the African continent?
Thank you, Greg. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Nina Freyson Pretorius here from Durban, South Africa. Beautiful and sunny outdoors here. I'm the CEO of the conference company, been in operation for 23 years, been in the industry for 25 years. And I think things are very, very challenging on the ground, as the colleagues Eyal and Nancy have already alluded to. What has been really, really positive in our scenario is that our government actually shut down or locked down, closed our borders very early, because we found that the COVID-19 virus was actually being imported coming from Europe. And we shut down the borders on the 27th of March. And that's been a tremendously good leadership, a good government decision, which has very much counted in our favors, contained the mortality, contained the increase. But the challenge with that is that South Africa, prior to the outbreak of this terrible pandemic, was already economically under distress. And so the challenge that we find is that the one very good government and leadership decision to shut down early was good to save lives. But on the opposite side of that scale was the reality that we have a tremendous amount of people living in poverty, and that potentially people are saying, well, we're going to die from hunger, not necessarily COVID-19, because it looks at this stage as if the spread is being contained as much as one can in poor communities, with an indication that our peak will be in September, because in South Africa we're in summer at the moment and we'll be going into winter. So that is essentially the question that Greg and Eyal put to us is, you know, how does that impact on you? How does that impact on the government support? So the challenge is, where does government give the money? First of all, we have to feed our people and keep our people safe. And so with the economy really stretched, the first port of call needs to be to look at supporting people of a lower income group, and our government has come about with, it's called a temporary employment relief plan, and essentially it's for minimum income earners. So if you're a business owner, you can apply for that relief, but it really is focused at a minimum wage of 170 euros. So people that earn that will be compensated, and employees need to submit that, but with a maximum of up to 327 euros. So someone who's a middle income person, that's the maximum that you are allowed to apply for that staff member and get relief as a business. Everybody needs the money. Where do we put the money? And so it's really, really challenging. Business relief, big and small businesses, we just don't have the fiscus and the money available to us. From our perspective, most of our conferences, we've still got a lockdown ban until the 30th of April. In all likelihood, a slightly softer lockdown, but with our numbers currently increasing in local communities, the expectation is an extension. Some conferencing, hybrid focus, probably November 2020. Otherwise, all our international association meetings have been moved out from the first quarter 2021 until even actually our American clients are much more conservative in their approach, and they are looking at the end, the fourth quarter of 2021, and some even beyond. What are the first events to take place? I think all of you need to be very, very practical in this scenario. I am sure that it's going to be people moving to meet with their divorce lawyers, if not to the prosecuting authority for anybody that murdered anybody else in the family, those that didn't do the dishes, pull the bodies out from under the beds. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. You know, I can only tell you from associations meetings that I work with where they're going, and it's very much further out. How are we going to survive from then until now? By prayer, by faith, and hoping for the best. Thank you, Greg and Eyal, for inviting me.
Right. Thanks, Nina. Well, according to Nancy, we really all should become wedding planners. So that may be the first step to recovery out of this. Thank you. Now I'd like to turn to Francesca, our colleague from Italy. And obviously, we've all been watching the press over the last month and a half, and our heart goes out to our colleagues in Italy. Clearly very, very hard hit. Northern Italy, it's just been devastating, needless to say, to that country. So Francesca, what can you share with us?
Yes, hi, hello everybody, and thank you for inviting me to this very interesting session. So as you told, I am Francesca Mazzani from AIM Group International, a PCO based in Italy with offices all over Europe and US and also the United Arab Emirates. What we are experiencing now, being based in Italy, is really a tremendous, really a very difficult situation. As you know from all the mass media, Italy has been the second country that was affected by the COVID virus after China. And we were all locked down, since we are all locked down since the end of February, beginning of March. So all our companies, all the industries are closed. Majority of them are closed. As of today, we have had 180,000 people infected by the virus, and the majority of them are in the north of Italy, which is the core of the business of our country. So the situation is difficult from the economic point of view. And you know that also there are all other countries in Europe that have been affected by us later, such as Spain, France, Germany, UK. And what we think and what we see is that probably Italy being blocked and locked down at the beginning, we may be probably the first country in Europe to go out of this crisis. We hope so, but it is very, very difficult to say. And as my other colleagues was telling you, so the situation is really very, very difficult. And so the unemployment is going up. Of course, there are many, you know also that Italy is living on middle enterprises. So not so huge companies, but middle large enterprises. So what we fear is that all these kind of companies may close down, and this will cause obviously additional problems for all the people. And nowadays the governments are still deciding when we could just start reopening. So we are locked down until the 4th of May. After that, there might be some reopenings, but in different regions of our countries, according to where the regions are being more affected or less affected. And for sure, our business is the one that has been enormously, let's say, affected and impacted by the virus. Tourism counts, let's say, the majority of the economy in Italy. So it is very, very difficult to go beyond this. And what we see is that at the end of the day, probably governments will take into major consideration the tourism and Congress fields, because now they are really realizing the importance of our business. And maybe this is, let's say, in a so bad situation, this might be the, let's say, the good news. Of course, it is really difficult. And what we see is that in this very moment, since the government is not given, let's say, the right directions and the perspectives for the future, as the situation is really still so fluid. Okay, we see that many of the industry and of the companies are still, let's say, in a wait position. Okay, so what we see from our, let's say, business point of view, and it is so strange to tell you that, my personally, I'm in the business for 16 years, and my company this year is celebrating its 60 anniversaries. So it is so strange to live in such anniversary, such important anniversary in a period like this. And what we see is that all the local events have been postponed or until the end of the year, and many of them also postponed to the next year. All the major national conferences has been also cancelled or postponed to the next year. International conferences, of course, has been postponed to the next year, and some of them also into 2 years' time, as of now. And what we experience now is that all events have been turned into virtual meetings. Many of them, those who have not cancelled, has been turned into virtual meetings. And we as AIM, we are going live with our first total virtual meetings at the end of April, so in few days. And this is an odontoiatrics conference. It's a national one, but it was expecting around 1,500 people attending. So we will see them in a virtual way.
Great, Francesca.
So yeah.
If I could, we're going to talk a little bit more about virtual meetings as we kind of move through, and I'd like to finish our global spin. So can you wrap up for us?
Yeah, sure. So the situation is really very, very difficult, and the government are giving subsidies and also unemployment insurances, and also subsidies for people, for families, and also for companies. Especially they are helping with the fiscal shiftings, the fiscal duties to the end of the year. So we are all positive, and as a paradox, we are working like crazy in these days to postpone, to replace all the events, and shifting them into virtual meetings. So the future is virtual, but we have to be really very careful not to overload and overwhelm the market with such webinars or virtuals and going. So I believe that creativity and communication is what will win in the future. And for sure, virtual meetings will be there also in the future after the COVID. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Francesca. And so let's cross another ocean and turn left once more to Elizabeth down in Latin and South America. Can you give us a snapshot of your region?
Good morning, everyone. It's so good to see you, even if it's virtually. Well, my name is Elizabeth Tovar. I'm the president of a PCO company, Turenlaces, which has 23 employees, rather large for Latin America. And we have been in business for 29 years. We see the region as very, very challenged with diverse problems that together make a very serious matter. The political and the COVID together are very bad in Latin America. The largest market for the industry, like Brazil, Argentina, and Peru, are suffering. Mexico is suffering absolutely. And mostly it's because of the lack of action of the governments. One of the worst problems that we have in Latin America is we haven't been able to let them know the importance of the economic and social and academic benefits of having the meeting industry in our region. So that's a challenge for the future. We need to communicate and to communicate effectively. Our meetings, most of the countries are shut down. I would say all of them. Some of them have been under curfew too, like the Dominican Republic. We have a mixture of both. We're in quarantine, but at night from 5 o'clock in the afternoon till 6 o'clock in the morning, we are under curfew. I think the worst part that we have is that we have a very large community of poor people that are living in very narrow spaces. And it is very difficult to comply with the quarantine when you have such a problem. Our meetings have been, most of them, postponed. I would say that we have like a 30% cancellation, and the rest have been postponed to the last 3 months of the year. And the international ones have been postponed to 2021. So we're keeping the national events going through the year. And we hope that we can do something that seems very, very far away, which is getting together the protocols for hotels, providers, everything, transport. That is something that worries us in Latin America because we feel that we are behind and we need to get going immediately. So in most of the countries, there have been, the government has authorized certain subsidies for the small businesses, which are most of the PCOs. But it's ridiculous to think that they can postpone the payment of taxes and things like that for only 30 days. I mean, this is going to go through the end of the year, and the measures that they're taking are short-term, very short-term. So we do need to communicate with them in a very effective way. And that is how Latin America is going. We feel that if we can get together the protocols and inspire confidence, we will be en route by September of this year, and I feel confident.
Great, gracias. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And lastly, turning north, you know, our leadership likes to claim we're the best, we're the greatest, and we have won the sweepstakes on COVID-19. If you look at the numbers in the United States, yes, indeedy, we are the best. We have the highest numbers, both in terms of number infected and clearly the number of deaths. So we won again. That has, I think, all sorts of ramifications, like how this has impacted other countries. I think, as Elizabeth stated, when you start to combine politics with health, you get what we're in the middle of right now, which is almost absurd. We're running a presidential campaign amidst a global pandemic that's having overwhelming impact in our country. However, looking throughout the region, Canada clearly has been impacted by this as well, but managing it quite a lot better. Yet the largest unmilitarized border in the world has been closed, and that's our border with Canada. And so we're seeing and doing things, as we are all around the world, that we've never seen the likes of. We've been in business 33 years, and I can confidently say we ain't never seen anything like this. And I think how we as an industry come out of this is part of what we want to chat about next. I think it's fair to say there will be significant impacts from this event that I'm afraid will be long lasting. And that's what we want to talk about a little bit more now and get your opinion on. So Sina, could we pull up the Slido results and see what we all feel as an industry the answers are to some of the questions that we posed in Slido? So one of our first questions was looking at the issue of when do we think the International Association meetings are going to be coming back. And you can see that Q1 2021 is by far the latest. I'm trying to see on my screen if I can move around and make sure I can see the results. But what I found interesting, if those of us were on the Global Meetings Event International Day, was quite shocking to me to see the majority of people feel it was going to be September when we would either be hosting an event or going to an event. And I'm quite pleased to see that we're a little smarter than that as an industry sector and recognize there's no way that's going to happen. And that clearly we're into the end of the year, if not the first quarter of 2021, before we return to something like normal in our space. And I think back to Nancy's point, will probably be last when you look at international associations in terms of coming back because of the health implications of this, because of the economic implications of what's happening. But I do think it will also be determined sector by sector. But I do think we will be a lagging indicator. And when we do come back, I think it will look very different, as we're starting to see already. Eyal, anything you would offer on this one?
I see that there is a very little difference between November, which I guess is November 2020. If it's 2020, then there's a very small difference between the two. So it's almost between November 2020 to 2021, which I hope is not going to be the case. You know.
Well, you know, I do think the reality is, and I've seen some questions here come up. I think an international traveler without a vaccine is going to be very reluctant to go through the entire international travel experience, crossing borders to airports, being on a plane without there being a vaccine. So I think the health of our industry is really going to be tied to how quickly can a vaccine be developed or the antibodies proven to make travel safe again, particularly with borders that I think are going to continue to shift as we see flare-ups of this. Let's go to the next question.
Just before, vaccines or any support with the flights, the same like after after September 11, when everybody started with magnetometers and everything. If there will be some tests before, might help.
Yep, great. Our whole question, I think our world is moving virtual, and we wanted to know if you all were moving virtual with us, and clearly the answer to that is yes. In terms of what we're going to have to do to survive. Can it ever replace the traditional face-to-face? I think, no, we know the value of that. But sitting here today, it is kind of interesting to think we might have seen the golden time for international travel, globalization, and international meetings. because I do think that there'll be a reluctance for folks to travel, as I said, and cross borders. I think you're going to see corporations doing business differently because they've learned coming out of what will end up being 2.5, if not 3 months of close down, they can keep business going without having to necessarily get on a plane and do face-to-face. And that's going to have an impact on our industry. I don't see any way around it. Yao, any thoughts?
Yes, it will. That answer, which is surprising me a little bit. I was sure will be a small percentage, but I think that will force us to create a business model to work with that, because currently we cannot compare the two. But if we go virtual, we'll have to see where does the income coming from and how in the association business.
Exactly.
Definitely for thought, yes.
Go ahead, Sina. Right, and here we ask kind of what parts can be replaced by virtual events. These will be available when we also close out this session, so you can take some time to come back and see how your colleagues did react to this. Sina, let's go ahead to the next one. This was a question to kind of ask, what % of your clients are you actively engaged in planning a partial or fully virtual event? And you can see that we tend to skew, it looks like 50% or less. I know from our standpoint, virtually every client we're talking with we're talking virtual, hybrid, or some degree more than we were doing in the past. And I think that that is probably the trend. I think we also heard that from Nancy in terms of what's happening and what we're seeing in the foreseeable future as well. Eyal, any addition there?
No.
Okay,
Thanks.
and let's keep spinning. So the whole question about, where are we in this? We're kind of really caught in the middle as PCOs in terms of working with all of our suppliers, our destination partners, all of the partners, and then the clients. And a lot of us have events that were planned for this year, many in the March, April timeframe when it really was the crisis of what do we do, to now as this goes on into the June, July, and all of next year. And how are we dealing with those? How are we kind of negotiating on both sides as companies, and how hard line can we be, and what do we do? And not surprisingly, it's majority of us are dealing on a case-by-case, client-by-client event to look at this, to figure out what is the way forward with them from a contractual standpoint. How do we protect the revenue that we need to do what they're asking us to do? And I think talking about, it's all about the relationships. It clearly always has been. And how do we maintain those relationships to maintain our businesses? Yao, I know this was a question that was close to your heart.
Yes, I think that since it's once in a lifetime that we are facing such a challenge and such a situation, it's not a normal crisis. It's not just breach of a contract, or it's something really that nobody could predict. The approach to most of the contracts that I'm hearing from other people, from people that are calling to ask what is the best to do, is basically being very personal. It's not dealing with the contract this time, it's dealing with the people, and you find a lot of understanding in both sides, at least from what I understood. It's not so easy, not everybody understands, but the more we go with that, the more it becomes personal, and not only to focus on the little details of the contracts.
Great. And next question, Sina. How will your business survive? How is this going to happen? And what do we need to do to kind of ourselves look at pivoting and changing? And I think the answer is right there. We're going to have to get creative. I think Francesca mentioned this as well. We're going to have to get creative. We're going to have to get closer to our clients, help them see the future themselves for what those events look like. And that means we're going to have to bring in and deal with an expertise that we might not have had before, and partner with different entities, different technologies that are going to help with the delivery of hybrid and virtual events from this. But we can see the risk we're all running in terms of how this could damage small businesses in our industry. And we all know it's not just us, it's all of our partners, all of our supplier partners that we work with that are really in many cases wouldn't have the cash flow to last a month. And that's another area that I think our business is going to look very different when we come out of this. Eyal, any thoughts before we move on? Great. Well, last but not least, we have another panelist that we saved to the very end here, and in case anyone thought we forgot about him, Ori with Kenneth has volunteered to kind of walk us through a case study of a virtual event that they put together, one of the early ones, and had to kind of figure out on the fly and make it work. So Ori, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you, Greg and Eyal, for having me here today. And hello to all the ICCA members. I also see a lot of IAPCO members, which makes me happy. I am the Vice President of Clients and Operation at Kenneth Group, and also became the President of IAPCO last February. And speak about timing. Wasn't the best timing in the world, probably, but we'll handle the challenge. Yes, so we did a virtual event a few weeks ago, and I will like to share the case study very quickly because we are limited in time. So this conference, which is a long acronym AAT, ADPD, and I'll give you a little bit about the background before I dive into the challenge and how we solved that. So we are running for more than 20 years in Kenneth, the conference called ADPD. It's a biannual event that started 20 years ago with 150 scientists that had a breakthrough finding a connection between Alzheimer and Parkinson. So they realized there is a connection between the two diseases, and it became a full concept of a congress. 20 years afterwards, it became the top place of science related to Alzheimer and Parkinson's. As you can see, last year in Lisbon, we had almost 4,000 delegates in this congress, which was an amazing success. 2 years ago, we've decided to joint venture with a small event called AAT, which has more of a clinical approach on the same topic. And the chair of the meeting was already 90 years old, and he thought, okay, I can no longer hold this congress, and he looked for a place to joint venture, and we decided to collaborate together, and we created a meeting in between that is called AAT ADPD. With the idea that on the long run, it will become an annual meeting over the ADPD, which is now biannual. And the first meeting was very successful. We had 1,300 people in 2018, and we were aiming to get almost about 1,800 for the meeting that was scheduled to take place this April in Vienna. So, of course, the challenge. The Congress was scheduled for Vienna in April. And then we were all introduced to COVID-19, of course. And our priority was to postpone, like everybody shared. The idea was to, when we were in February, everybody were postponed to July, maybe September. Of course, what we knew 3 weeks afterwards was that even September is no longer valid. But we also looked at the contingency plan and to moving virtual. So those were both on the table. We received dates in November in the Austria Center in Vienna, and we started working on postponing the events, negotiating all the suppliers, the hotel, the venue, like every of you are facing day to day about postponing events. But then the clients' chairs, 3 chairs, decided to go virtual, this was probably our reaction when we understood that they were serious about going virtual. Of course, it's not virtual reality, but going virtual. And we were 3.5 weeks before the original date of the Congress, and we haven't notified anything to the delegates or the sponsors. So we realized that 3.5 weeks before the Congress, we have no virtual platform, and we have to record about more than 250 presentations. And I think this is a scene from our IT meeting, understanding the challenge they have to sort in 3.5 weeks. More to know or lesson learned or before you go virtual. First of all is choosing, and I'll show the solution of course in a minute, choosing the right system or the right platform. This is crucial because there are many platforms and systems out there, and I guess everybody's asking, where do I go for a virtual Congress? And not all of them give a good holistic solution to all your needs. So it's usually a combination between something that is more visual, like a virtual lobby, that will give you more an avatar kind of walkthrough that you can go to the auditorium or the exhibition. So that's the easy part. The challenging part is how to connect the entire, especially in an association or medical conferences, the entire scientific meeting, the entire scientific content, the abstract, the posters, the recorded session, and the live session. So it's usually combining between what we have in your scientific platform management system, together with some kind of a virtual solution, together with some sort of software developing together to find a good solution. Communication plan. While going virtual, this is one of the crucial parts. You have to have a very good communication plan before you start executing. Who is the first to know? Is it the sponsors? Is it the delegates? What are the different messages to the different audience? So you have to break it down very well by audiences, messages, timing, and who's the person who's communicating. Is this the conference chair, the association president, the PCO, the AM company, and so forth? It has to be clear, ready to launch up to the last wording of the email or the letter that is, or the FAQ that you have to put on the website. So that's crucial for a successful shifting to a virtual meeting. One of the biggest challenges is how do you actually keep on board the sponsor and exhibitors? And this is very challenging. In our case, because we had the chairs, we have 3 co-chairs of this meeting, were really into going virtual because they realized that science is more important now than the face-to-face meeting. The progress of science is what counts. And they personally went out with us to all the sponsored exhibitors, saying that in these difficult times, they need to keep, they need their support. And it did, they did. The majority of the sponsors stay on board. The biggest challenge was always with exhibitors because they don't see a value with a virtual exhibition. It's very hard to convince them that a virtual exhibition is a replacement for a physical one, which is true. It's not the same, especially in trade shows, but there are advantages. There are advantages that we can offer, and I'll show it a little bit later in the exhibition. And the fact that actually this exhibition can last more than just the days of the events. I mean, the entire conference can last for 3-6 months. The content is there, so they have a longer exposure in the coming month. Of course, if you have a long-term relationship with exhibitors, you can offer them future benefits and so forth. So it's case by case kind of communication to find a good solution for them. Refund policy, which is a big issue also when canceling events or postponing events. It's also the same with virtual events. And here it's really about the timing. When do you decide to go virtual? Is it the beginning? Do you have already 1,000 people registered and so forth? So that's really something that you need to decide according to the timing. We were fortunate to have about 1,400 people already registered when we decided to go virtual. So we decided to give them about 10 more days from the day we announced to provide 50% refund, although we were already in the timing of no refund at all. We thought it was fair to give about 10 days to people to, if they don't want to join the virtual. Of course, if we didn't get into any fight with the delegates. If somebody was really dissatisfied and he says, well, I would just go and cancel my credit card charge or whatever, we didn't argue. We gave a full refund on a one-on-one level because we thought it was fair. Of course, you will need to anticipate a drop in participant when going virtual, about 30%, which is the case we have seen. On the other hand, and I'll show you, we were actually quite surprised having 200 new delegates register 10 days before the event. They knew it's virtual, they paid full participation fee, registration fee, and were joined by the last 10 days before the meeting. One of the biggest lessons learned we had is about recording speakers, which will sound a little bit surprising because we have imagined that you can send, after communicating with all the speaker and coordinating a time slot for them to record the session, we thought you can actually just send them a link, maybe a Zoom link or whatever software you're using, and just allow them to, once you click on the link, the recording is starting. And we just added the beginning and the end, and we have a full session recording. But it didn't work that way. We realized fairly quickly that you have to be full on board with the speaker throughout the recording session. Join in the beginning, make sure the camera is working well, the sound is working well, no interference, because we had a few recording when you hear the dog barking or the phone ringing or the family is going behind him or everything, although he got all the instruction in the beginning. So we had to go with more than 250 speakers to the entire recording of the session, which is a big operational challenge, let's say. And then connecting the dots. I mean, everything is different in virtual. Even the roles and responsibility of your conference team. What does a project manager does if he doesn't have any virtual meeting and he doesn't need to manage any online stuff or anything? So you have to really look at the different conference team and reallocate some of the roles and responsibility, but also you have to have one leader to take control, because it's challenging to the entire team, and somebody needs to hold it together. Now, so that was the main challenge. So let's look at the solution quickly. So we have obviously, as I mentioned, we have combined a virtual lobby, which is a software company, with our program management software, which is CTI Meetings, with our own development of single sign-on and additional stuff to what you see here. Now, design-wise, of course, you can argue if it is good design or not. This is something that the clients wanted, and you can obviously play around with the design. The people you see, the old people picture you see, are people that project done by Biogen, that were part of a clinical trial of a drug against Alzheimer. All of those are over 100 years old, probably in the biggest risk of getting COVID-19. But anyhow, you see, and what we did, which is also important, and you see video, I muted the sound so I can just speak throughout the video. You need to explain to people what is a virtual meeting, the potential attendance. They don't know. So we created quickly a sneak peek of what is expected from the virtual meeting. So here you can see, this is how you log into the system, follow up on social media. I'm just gonna quickly jump. This gonna be, sorry. This is gonna be your lobby. What can you see in the lobby? Where you click to see the session? Where do you click to see the e-posters? Where do you see the rest of the participant and how you can reach out and network with them? So I'm just gonna jump quickly. Where are the live session or meet the professors or the symposium of the sponsors and so forth. I'm just gonna jump. So as you can see, this is how live stream is being seen. Although it says Zoom is using a Zoom technology, but in order to get a good quality streaming, we are using a third-party streaming service to make sure that more than 1,000 people can see it in the same time. So we're not dependent only on Zoom, which is, the challenges with Zoom. You can't see it, but on the bottom you had a place you can just submit your question like you do in a regular Zoom meeting. We had a support that.
Rory, could I jump in with two questions that I'm seeing pop up from our attendees that I think are really relevant to right where you are right now. One is kind of, do you see the PCO role in this interim period kind of being the person who does all this, or do we get relegated to kind of technology tasks only? And then obviously the big question, how does this impact fees? We're used to making money in a certain set of ways. And can you make as much running a virtual meeting for a client as we could running a face-to-face? I got to think the answer is no. So how do we all keep doing this?
So for the first question, the answer is yes. I think it's the role of the PCO. And I think it goes back to the last question you showed in the survey, that we need to reinvent ourselves. And of course, you need to have a strong IT team to support it. But if you are the only company who actually can connect the dots, take the software, you are anyhow managing the scientific program, you have the IT capabilities and knowledge, and you are the only one who can actually perform and execute on behalf of the association. I don't think they can go, I mean, there are companies that provide a turnkey solution for a virtual event. They are super expensive. I saw a few quotes and I don't know who pays this amount of money. And I think the biggest advantage is that you have the people and you have the capacity, the operational capacity to actually execute them. Okay, so you have people that originally were in different roles in your company, then shift them. Let them do the recording of the speaker. So that's one question. The second one about the business model and the profit. Yeah, probably you can't profit the same on a virtual event than in a physical one. On the other hand, if you're in a situation of like we had a force majeure, then you don't have also the expenses of the venue and the AV and the catering and so forth. So you can actually have a nice profitable budget. Again, if there is a force majeure, if not, that's a different story. But because you have extra expenses, that of course you need to think what to do with them. So yeah, if you are able to maintain the support of the industry, and you can have, even if you have a drop of 30 or 40% of the delegates, you can still make money, not the same for the association and for the PCO.
Right.
So hope that
Great. Well, thank you. And in the interest of time, we've got only about 2 minutes left. I did just want to quickly flip back to 2 questions that I saw in the Q&A that I wanted to address. Number one, do we think there's going to be a change in rotation patterns and site selection? Absolutely. People are going to be looking to minimize risk. I think the decisions are going to be made much closer to the date of the event. People are not going to book too far into the future because of the uncertainty with this. And absolutely, the questions are going to be asked about how your country dealt with COVID-19, your city, your country. That's going to become part of the selection criteria, I think, going forward. Another question was asked about the percent of people coming to the new face-to-face meetings versus the old face-to-face meeting. And what do we think that percent is going to be? The people I'm talking to that are looking and planning this right now, and I'd love Eyal or Ori, your thoughts. You know, you better plan on less than 50% of the attendance you thought you were going to see. You've got to start there because there are going to be so many people, depending on the sector, who aren't going to travel when we come out of this, even when it's safe to travel. So I think you've really got to be thinking about that. Any other thoughts on that, Ori or Eyal?
Again, I'll be the more optimistic guy, and I think that we're planning, again, it depends on the time of the year. For now, 20 to 30% of drop, not 50, but it really depends on the event, on the target audience and the location. But yeah, but I'll be more optimistic here.
All right.
You're talking about hybrid conferences.
No, I'm talking about, yeah.
Physical hybrid conferences.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Another question that came up just from the Q&A was about the CME. Since you've done it already, the CME got the same rules. Do they have any differences?
We've received the full CME, and actually we are actually exploring if you can receive more CME, because in CME, the way they calculate the CME, which is continuous medical education, is that you have a 3 days event and you can attend only 8 hours. You can't attend 5 sessions in parallel. But here, when all the program is actually out there for 3 months, you might get additional. This is something we're still checking, but originally we got the same CME accreditation as a physical one. And then maybe, Greg, I just want to show quickly.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ori, we're out of time. We've got to wrap it up in the interest of everybody, but you remain a resource for our industry. We'll have this information available post-call, and feel free. The beauty of having a sector within ICCA is that we can do just this. We can share with each other, we can be a resource for each other, and clearly Ori has some experience and knowledge and a platform that I'm sure he'd be happy to chat with everybody about. We really appreciate everybody hanging in and being with us. We think this is the first of many sector calls that we'd like to have, because there are a host of issues that come out of this that we want to engage everybody on with learning more about this, learning more about how we can pivot. We have some evaluation questions, poll questions from this event that we would really like you to take the time, give us your impression, talk to us about this better and what other information you'd like to see us do a presentation on and around. It's going to be interesting times for all of us. It's already interesting times, and they're going to get even more interesting as we look at how we emerge from this and come back to hosting large international gatherings. With that, Eyal, do you want to close us out and take us out?
Just want to thank everybody. I think it was the hour was running very fast. It means there was a lot of topics that needed to be covered. I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot to do. With questions that will come out from our colleagues, we'll be able to form other meetings in the near future. I think it's very interesting to share. We don't have necessarily answers, but it's important to share, to listen to each other, and to see maybe we come up with ideas that are valid for everybody. Thank you. And thank you, Greg. You did a fantastic job.
And thank you to our panelists from around the world, members, ICCA members all, and really appreciate their support. And finally, the last question I saw, does ICCA have strategic plans for how we're going to manage our way through this? And as board members, 2 sitting board members, I can tell you this is how the board is spending its time right now, looking and scenario planning and thinking about how we support our members more through this challenging process. So absolutely, you'll be hearing more from ICCA about what we do as an organization to stay relevant, stay solvent, and stay together for all of us as we come through this most challenging time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.